In this video, we're going to be breaking down 5 MLB games happening on June 28, 2026, and providing you with a side pick and a total pick for every matchup. 10 free MLB picks in total. As usual, stick around until the end because you won't want to miss out on anything. Cincinnati Reds versus Pittsburgh Pirates. Sunday afternoon baseball in Pittsburgh has a particular kind of rhythm to it, and this series finale fits neatly into that pocket. The visitors rolled into PNC Park on Friday and stole the opener with a late, gutsy comeback, and you'd think that kind of win carries forward, but momentum in baseball is a slippery little thing. Honestly, the bigger story is what's been quietly stacking up behind the scenes for the Cincinnati side. Their rotation has been picked apart for weeks. Hunter Green still hasn't thrown a regular season pitch. Nick Lodolo took a 107-mile-per-hour comebacker off his wrist not long ago, and the bullpen just lost reliever Tony Santillan to a strained oblique that's likely to sideline him for a significant stretch. That kind of attrition shows up in sneaky ways. Late innings turn into adventures, the pen gets shorter, and a coaching staff starts leaning on arms it never planned on leaning on. Brady Singer takes the ball for the road club sitting at 3-6 with an earned run average hovering close to 5, which tells you most of the story right there. He throws strikes, but he gives up enough loud contact that a patient lineup can absolutely make him pay. Here's the thing about the Pittsburgh club at home. They've been quietly competitive in the division all summer long, sitting at 41-41 and playing a touch better than their record probably suggests. Brian Reynolds has been swinging it like a guy on a mission, riding a lengthy hitting streak into this one, and Brandon Lowe has been one of the hotter bats in the league over the past 2 weeks. Mitch Keller, the right-hander getting the start on the home side, isn't a name that lights up a marquee, and his earned run average won't make anyone gasp, but he's a steady veteran who knows the park, knows the breeze coming off the rivers, and gives his team a fighting chance every single time out. A getaway day finale is also the kind of game where a road team grinding through a brutal patch of injuries can flatten out a little, and the home crowd, smelling a series win, has every reason to push their guys forward. As our first pick for this matchup, the Pittsburgh Pirates money line is our full game side pick. PNC Park sits squarely in the pitcher-friendly tier for a reason. The spacious outfield, those generous power alleys, and the way fly balls go to die in heavy summer air all play into it. The forecast for first pitch points to highs around 84 degrees with light, variable winds, and a 60% chance of scattered thunderstorms developing through the afternoon, which is the exact kind of soup that takes the carry right out of the baseball. You won't see balls jumping out of the yard in that kind of stagnant, sticky air, and if a rain delay creeps into the proceedings, that adds another wrinkle. Fewer crisp innings, choppier pace, and tougher conditions to drive a pitch with any authority. Both starters are right-handers sitting in that mid-4 earned run average range, which sounds unremarkable on paper, yet the matchup profile itself leans toward a contained scoring environment because neither offense has been wildly explosive this month. The Cincinnati lineup, in particular, has been whiffing at a rate that ranks at the bottom of the National League. And when a club strikes out that often, entire frames vanish without so much as a hard hit ball to show for it. Let me explain something about Sunday afternoon getaway games too. They tend to drag scoring downward in subtle ways. Hitters are tired from the Saturday night turnaround. Umpires often widen their zones in the heat, and concentration just drifts a touch as travel day looms. Both bullpens are also coming off heavier usage earlier in this series, which usually means managers will want longer outings from their starters and faster hooks once leverage shows up. Fewer matchups, fewer free base runners. Bake all of that together and what you get is a game that profiles toward economy rather than fireworks, the kind of low 80s, slow grinding afternoon that finishes with both clubs trudging back to the clubhouse feeling like the offense never quite found a rhythm. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Quick commercial break. You know the deal. If you want to get our exclusive best sport picks to take things to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Go check it out. Commercial break over. Now back to the game. Washington Nationals versus Baltimore Orioles. There's a tale that keeps writing itself in Baltimore lately, and it has nothing to do with the standings or the trade rumors floating around Camden Yards. It's about a right-hander who, for the better part of 2 years, was a question mark wearing a uniform. The kind of pitcher fans whispered about when they didn't want to jinx anything. Well, the whispers stopped about 10 days ago, because in his last 2 trips to the mound, this guy didn't just look like the version of himself everyone remembered before the elbow surgery. He looked better. He went out to Seattle and racked up a career high in punch punch-outs. Then, just to make sure nobody thought it was a fluke, he turned around and walked into a matchup against the defending champions and spun 8 shutout innings with 9 more strikeouts. That's not a hot streak, that's a guy announcing himself. And he's getting the ball this afternoon in front of a home crowd that has been begging for something to feel good about. Now consider what's standing in the other dugout. The Nationals are essentially asking a swingman with an earned run average north of 5 to cover a Sunday matinee against a lineup that has Pete Alonso swinging a bat, Gunnar Henderson finding his power stroke, and Taylor Ward sitting at the top of the order. Washington has often turned this exact rotation slot into a bullpen day, which means even if their guy navigates the first 4 reasonably, the back end has to come in and survive a lineup that absolutely punishes mediocre stuff in this park. Layer in the fact that Baltimore is sitting at a sub-.500 record they desperately want to push back toward respectability, that they just got embarrassed on the West Coast, and that they're getting their 2 best back-to-back starts pitcher of his entire career on a Sunday at home against a divisional curiosity, and you have all the conditions for the kind of statement game where the home team doesn't just win, they push the late innings into garbage time. The margin matters here, and the matchup screams comfortable. As our first pick for this matchup, the Baltimore Orioles to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Now flip the lens and look at what's actually going to happen between the chalk lines, because the run environment in this one has been screaming at us all weekend. Camden Yards in late June with the temperature pushing into the upper 70s, and that famously short porch in right field is a ballpark that rewards mistakes, and there are going to be mistakes in this game. Washington's pitching staff has the lowest opponent miss rate in the entire league, which is a polite way of saying hitters do not swing through their stuff, they put it in play, and a lot of those balls land in places nobody wants them to. Combine that with a Nationals bullpen that has been one of the leakier units in baseball, and you've got a recipe for crooked numbers anytime the visitors hand the ball off. On the other side, even when Baltimore's starter is locked in, his job is to get to the 7th, and that's when the Orioles relief corps, which has had its own share of meltdowns, has to navigate against an offense that genuinely scares people. The Nationals are batting near the top of the league against left-handed pitching and have been one of the better road offenses in baseball, and while they don't see a lefty today, their approach against fastballs has been one of the more dangerous in the sport. So you've got a hitter's park, warm air, 2 bullpens that bleed runs in the wrong situations, and 2 lineups that both arrive with legitimate thump. The counter-argument exists. Of course, the Orioles starter could go 8 again, the Nationals follower could give them 5 quiet innings, and we'd be looking at a 4-2 game by the 8th. That's a real risk. But the more honest read, given the park, the weather, the bullpens, and the way both these teams have been swinging the bats in this series, is that the scoreboard operator is going to be busy. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Texas Rangers versus Toronto Blue Jays. Honestly, there's a specific kind of urgency that takes over a clubhouse when a series finale shows up after 3 straight losses on home turf, and Toronto is walking into Sunday with exactly that kind of edge. The Blue Jays haven't just dropped this series so far, they've watched each game slip away in the early innings, and a roster that played deep into October last fall isn't usually built to wear a 4-game broom job at home with any kind of comfort. Here's the thing, the Rangers have been winning these games by jumping out first against starters who weren't at their sharpest, and the right-hander getting the ball for Texas today has carried one of the leakier first-inning profiles in the league all year long, to the point his own organization has tried hiding him behind an opener earlier this season. That's not the sort of move a team makes when a starter's groove is locked in. Zooming out a bit, the visiting bats have struggled to manufacture consistent traffic away from their home park this season, ranking among the lowest in on-base production at the top of the order on the road and showing real weakness when they fall behind in counts against contact-heavy staffs. Toronto, on the flip side, has been one of the toughest lineups in baseball to strike out against right-handed pitching, and that's exactly the kind of profile that hangs in there with a slider-first arsenal long enough to make a starter sweat by the 3rd turn through. The honest counter is that the home crowd's offense has been stuck in a real funk through this 5-game skid, and the arm they're handing the ball to had a rough reintroduction in his first outing back from a long absence, no sugarcoating that. But you can also flip the script in a heartbeat, a former Cy Young Award winner getting his second crack in front of his own fans, with adrenaline turned all the way up and a desperate lineup behind him, is the textbook setup for the kind of sharper, settled-in performance that quiets a series. Pile on the simple fact that the bookmaking market has nudged the home side into a moderate favorite role here, and once you stack the matchup vulnerabilities, the situational pressure, and the gravity of a team trying to avoid getting swept on its own field, the cleaner side of the value comes into view. As our first pick for this matchup, the Toronto Blue Jays money line is our full game side pick. 3 straight games in this series have sailed past the projected total comfortably, and that's not the kind of pattern you fade lightly without a really good reason, which the matchup on paper just doesn't hand you today. What's been happening through this weekend isn't some fluke either. It's 2 lineups that pounce on mistakes early, 2 bullpens being asked to cover more innings than they'd like, and 2 starters now stepping into a spotlight that fits the same leaky pattern. The home side is rolling out a pitcher making just his second appearance after a long layoff, and his return outing featured multiple long balls and the kind of stat line that lights up a box score for all the wrong reasons. On the visiting side, the right-hander on the mound has been one of the more vulnerable first-inning arms in the league this season, and a huge chunk of the damage across this series has come in those opening frames when bats are still fresh and pitchers are still hunting their feel. Both bullpens have also been pushed hard the last few days, with Saturday's contest in particular cycling through a parade of arms after a bullpen-style opener strategy, so the back-end coverage looks shakier than usual on both sides heading into a quick afternoon turnaround. The fair counter is that the home lineup has been frigid for a stretch, and if either starter steals strikes early and settles in, this thing could go quieter than the recent script. That said, even the colder bats in this series have been waking up late, with rallies showing up in basically every contest of the weekend so far, often in the 8th inning when the leverage gets tightest. Add in a setting where weather isn't a meaningful variable thanks to the retractable cover, which lets the hitting matchups dictate the rhythm without wind cutting into fly balls, and the recent run pace becomes the cleanest read on the whole board. The series momentum, the pitching profiles, the bullpen fatigue, and the way each game has trended on the scoreboard so far all keep pointing in the same direction. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Seattle Mariners versus Cleveland Guardians. Cleveland's setup for this afternoon is one of those quietly stacked spots that doesn't scream at you, but starts whispering louder the longer you look. The right-hander they're handing the ball to has been their most reliable arm for months now, and he's currently sitting at the very top of his entire league in strikeouts. You don't accidentally lead the American League in punchouts in late June. He's worked through at least 5 innings in every single start he's made this season, and a healthy chunk of those outings have ended with him walking off the mound still in line for the win. Honestly, what makes this lean sharper is the guy he's standing across from. Seattle's starter built his entire identity on attacking the strike zone, and that very habit has started biting back at him in a real way. Hitters have grown awfully comfortable timing his sequences, his early season form has steadily faded, and he's mostly been chasing his own ghost for weeks now. His most recent outing flashed some life with double-digit strikeouts, but a single rebound start doesn't erase a stretch where the contact stayed loud and the results stayed even uglier. Now, the counter is fair, and you have to say it out loud. Seattle has already grabbed the first 2 games of this series on the road against a Cleveland club playing without their best bat. So why pivot here? Here's the thing, those 2 wins came against the back end of the rotation, with a piggyback experiment in the middle that even the Mariners' own fan base couldn't stop grumbling about. The matchup landscape on this Sunday looks nothing like the first 2 days. The home dugout is finally rolling out their workhorse, and the visiting side is countering with a pitcher whose recent body of work has been wobbly enough to keep this price honest. There's also the small matter of how Seattle's offense has been moving lately, or really, not moving at all. They've been stuck in a deep funk where scratching out a couple of runs feels like an accomplishment. That's a rough recipe when you're trying to chase down a club built specifically to lock down the late innings on its own grass. Cleveland's lineup is hurting too, no argument, but the hole on the Mariners' side feels noticeably wider when their guy across the way has been carving up everyone he sees, and the home side has gone 42-41 with most of their identity built on pitching depth and home leverage. As our first pick for this matchup, the Cleveland Guardians money line is our full game side pick. 2 things jump out the second you frame up this Sunday matinee. The runs have been hiding in this series, plain and simple. Friday produced 4 combined. Saturday matched it with another 4. That isn't a coincidence, pile. That's the temperature of the entire weekend showing up on the scoreboard. The second piece is the building these guys are playing in. Progressive Field has long been known as a yard that treats arms fairly, neither juicing a fence nor smothering it, and the forecast falls right in line with that vibe. Sunny skies, a high in the upper 70s, almost nothing in the way of rain, and no real wind story to speak of. No howling gusts blowing balls into the bleachers, no muggy summer soup making baseballs travel an extra row. Just a calm afternoon in Cleveland with conditions that essentially keep the run environment honest. Mix in the fact that the visiting bats are walking into this one stuck in one of their coldest stretches of the season. They haven't really stretched their legs offensively in almost 2 weeks of baseball. That's not a slump anymore, that's basically the personality of the lineup at this point. Their late-inning numbers also rank near the bottom of the league, which makes the idea of a sudden comeback rally tough to picture even if they fall behind early. The home side isn't exactly intimidating with the lumber either. Their slugging output sits near the basement of the league, their team batting average is right there with it, and they're still missing names that would normally give that order some teeth. So neither side is bringing the kind of bat-first energy that turns a tight ball game into a fireworks show. The bullpens shape up nicely for a quieter afternoon too. Neither club had to drain its relievers on Saturday, which means the back ends stay fresh, and that's the type of pen availability that lets a manager hook a starter early and trust the late innings to stay locked down. Could the offenses suddenly wake up and remember who they're supposed to be? Sure, baseball is rude like that, and a couple of solo shots in a 3-2 win can flip the math in a hurry. But the whole shape of this afternoon, the arms, the ballpark, the recent series scoreboard, the conditions, and the health of both lineups all keeps pointing in the same direction. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Philadelphia Phillies versus New York Mets. Picture the scene unfolding at Citi Field on a sleepy Sunday afternoon in Queens, where one team is showing up dressed for a pennant race and the other looks like it just got off a really bad red eye. The Phillies roll into this rubber match riding a wave that honestly feels bigger than just a couple of weekend wins. They sit at 46-36. They have already grabbed the first 2 games of this series in Flushing, and under interim skipper Don Mattingly they have gone something like 35-17, which is the kind of stretch that flips a clubhouse from anxious to swaggering. Across the diamond, the Mets are basically the inverse of that energy. They are 34-48. They fired Carlos Mendoza on Friday morning. They have dropped 8 straight, and brand new interim manager Andy Green is staring at a starting rotation that just had David Peterson traded out the door, Tyler McGill on the shelf, and Sunday's starter listed as a true question mark, with the front office reportedly mulling a bullpen day or a fresh call-up. Philly counters with Jesus Luzardo, a lefty who has built his career taking the ball against this exact club more than anyone else and who carries a tidy career mark against Queens. Now, here's the thing. The Bears will tell you Luzardo has been streaky in June, and Philadelphia as a group has not exactly mashed left-handed pitching this season, and that's a fair counterpoint worth respecting. But Luzardo is not the lefty Philly is facing today, and the matchup itself, an established big league starter against a patchwork bullpen game for a team that has lost its manager, its rotation depth, and its swagger all in 1 week, is the kind of gap that tends to show up on the scoreboard. Add in a Mets lineup that may be playing without Francisco Lindor at full strength because of a hand issue, plus a relief corps that has been worked hard through this losing skid, and you start to see why the road club has every structural edge here: momentum, manager stability, rotation strength, and confidence from already pocketing the first 2 games. As our first pick for this matchup, the Philadelphia Phillies money line is our full game side pick. Shifting gears to the run-scoring environment, this game has a pretty clean argument for staying tucked away on the lower end of the projection. Start with the climate inside that Mets lineup, which has quietly been one of the quietest offenses in the sport this year, ranking near the bottom in team on-base percentage and putting up some of the league's worst numbers in the late innings, where rallies usually live or die. That kind of profile, struggling to string at-bats together, leaning on a couple of stars to do all the heavy lifting, tends to translate into innings that move fast, and fast innings are an under-better's best friend. The weather chips in too, with a mild summer afternoon in Queens, temperatures in the low 80s, a calm breeze around 5 miles per hour, and only a sliver of rain chance, none of which screams launching pad conditions. Citi Field itself is a ballpark with deep alleys that historically rewards pitchers more than hitters, and the Phillies bullpen, the group that closed out Friday's 2-1 nail-biter, has been humming along recently with strong earned run average and WHIP numbers over its last handful of outings. I'll be honest, there are counterweights worth flagging. Lusardo can absolutely have one of those starts where the ball flies and crooked numbers show up, and a Mets bullpen day can pop open in unpredictable ways. You know how baseball is. Still, the broader pattern from this exact series is impossible to ignore. The recent head-to-head meeting in this park ended in a low-scoring grinder. The Phillies have a noticeable trend toward low-scoring road games stretching back over the last couple dozen road trips, and a deflated, manager-just-fired home team coming off an 8-game tailspin is rarely the recipe for a fireworks show. Put the offensive struggles, the pitcher-friendly venue, the mild conditions, and the recent series tempo together, and the run environment leans toward restraint rather than chaos. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.